Good morning, everybody. So welcome to day 100 of compassionate response to COVID-19 with Mahabodhi. So I started these sessions on the 17th of March, when the previous day the Prime Minister of the UK announced that we shouldn't gather together, because of COVID-19, and I thought I needed to start responding to the beginning of the lockdown. So today's the 100th session I've done since then, and actually, hi Shobit. What I've chosen today is in a way one of my favourite topics. So it's looking at the way in which Buddhism is this dynamic relationship, in a way, between three types of people, or three types of activity and things like that. But before I do that, I just want to to mark the 100th session with a cake. I haven't got any cake, but I've got a trifle with a candle in it at the top of it. So anyway, so here we go. This is celebrating 100 sessions, and well done me, well done everybody for turning up and coming along on the ride, and it's felt very supportive having people come and meditate with me, and to listen to what I've got to say, and feedback in the comments section of Facebook and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I felt a part of a nice community, and it's felt great to actually get a lot of the ideas that have been developing over the years, over quite a long time, out there into the world. So it's been a significant kind of creative period for me, this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the relationship between the creative process and kind of it manifesting in the world a little bit later on. That'll be part of the talk, the talk today. So here we go. 100 sessions. So in the next phase, I'm hoping to. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do, but I got a feeling it would be something a little bit different. And one of the things I want to try and do is some discussions, and get some interesting mixes of people discussing kind of relevant topics, interesting topics, but also trying to really get down to this is a fantastic opportunity, I think, for just people in the world in general to stop and reflect and have a think about how things are, how we're running the world, and what we're doing in our own lives and all that sort of thing. So Buddhism advises us to stop every now and then, and in a way meditation is about that. It's about stopping and then looking at our experience and reflecting on our experience, and then trying to come back with a more creative and original and helpful way of approaching things. So hopefully this whole COVID-19 pandemic will actually contribute towards that in some way. So helping the world reflect a bit more on its experience. Okay, so I'll eat that later. Always one for some ritual. So today we're going to look at the threefold model. We're going to look at creativity, and also we're going to look at. So 10 years ago, I did an article for Shabda, so Shabda is it's like a monthly journal that members of the Triratna Buddhist order, used to be the Western Buddhist order, kind of submit reports into, and also articles and things. So I put an article in 10 years ago, which was like looking at the history of Triratna movement, of what used to be called the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, from its inception through the decades, really. You know, I think came into being in the late 60s, but there's been various phases that it seems to have gone through, and these seem to correlate with the theme of today, which is this way in which there's a threefold way of looking at things in Buddhism. Just in brief, I'll say, so it's a bit like you've got three types of Buddhists. You've got your settled monastic, so that's like the monk or a person working in a Buddhist centre, putting on classes and trying to interact with people and develop community. You've got the forest renunciant, who is a kind of lone figure, so they are very, very interested in their particular topic, or kind of field in a way. So it might be that they're kind of really wanting to get deep into meditation, so they go off in Tibet, they'd be in a cave somewhere meditating for years, or on solitary retreat for years and things, that sort of thing. So they're really developing the depths of the meditation. But it might be that it's also the forest renunciant is somebody like a scholar, who's really kind of going deeply into what the Buddha actually said and the Buddhist tradition is actually saying, and trying to have a clearer and clearer understanding of that. And then, it might be that it's the artist who's really keen to engage their own and other people's emotions with the symbols and images and archetypes, and both of their own unconscious, but also the kind of those coming from the symbolism that's there in the Buddhist tradition. And then you've got the lay practitioner. So the lay practitioner is the person who maybe takes responsibility in the world. Maybe they see what they're most interested in is to be a good member of society, or like contributing towards society, taking responsibility. They're quite interested in the world itself. So these three aspects are like three orientations that we probably have through temperament. So I'm more attracted to the forest renunciant, the thinker, the meditator, that sort of thing. And other people I know feel more at home working at the Buddhist centre and constantly working in teams of people and helping to put things on, and other people feel more at home in the world, with the challenges of that, So this is what we're going to look at later on. Okay, so we'll begin as always with some body work, and then do some meditation, and then get on to today's topic. Okay, so let's do some doin, which comes from the Japanese tradition. It's a form of self-massage. So if we could begin by drumming with our fingers on top of our head. A bit like raindrops. And tuning into the experience that you're having of your feet on the ground. sounds of your fingers drumming on your head. Being aware of your clothing touching your skin. The world outside, the world of the senses, the world of sounds of the birds, and traffic or whatever you can hear out there. We're just trying to be in the world, kind of inhabit the world, and just let the world be there. Give your hands a bit of a squeeze. Let it be there, the world, but have it there, coming into a soft awareness. Just do whatever feels is helpful to you to kind of wake up your body. Take responsibility for your own body. Put your hands together. Generate a bit of heat. And then just put your forehead in the palms of your hands. And take some deeper breaths. I'm just waiting for yourself to quieten down. Waiting for your forehead to realise that it's being held and to start to relax and give itself to your hands. Turning away from the world in a physical way, so it's symbolic of just, we don't have to be always looking outwards to the next thing that we have to do. So sometimes we really need to turn inwards and stop actually doing things for the world and just see how we are. And then when you're ready, just give your face a little bit of a massage. Okay, a bit of a shake. Okay, swinging backwards and forwards. And then just put your elbow in the palm of your hand and go over the top into your spine. On the other side. And then down the outside of your arm. And onto the back of your hand. And make it a little bit painful. We might have all sorts of ideas of what we're going to do today, which is good, you know, if we have. And then there's the vehicle that's going to get us there, you know. So you know, which consists of our body and our mind. So if we can, we're not going to get we're going to run out of steam pretty quickly unless we actually start with some resources at the beginning of the day. So this is all about this, you know, getting ready for action, getting our body into a better state, and then when we meditate, we're getting our mind and emotions into a better state. And then we can actually achieve a bit more than we might have done. Palms of your hands. And then up the inside of your arm. And then other side. Back of your hand. So just be, you know, if you do have some physical condition, be sensitive to your body. But if you can give it a good bit of stimulation, then do that. That'd be helpful. And palms of your hands. the insides of your arms. And then on your chest. And then some circles on your stomach, clockwise. And just listen to the sound of your hands on your clothes. Relaxing your shoulders, down your back, your arms. And then just lightly drumming on your kidneys at the back there. And then more heavily on your buttocks and the backs of your legs. Back of your bottom of your spine, your sacrum. Just try to wake everything up down there. And then down your legs as far as you can go. And shake everything out. Okay, so that was the stimulating part of the body work. Hopefully your body's a bit more awake now. So just let your breathing calm down. And then just putting your hands one on top of the other on your stomach, arms by your sides. And then just when you notice that you're breathing out, bend your knees and straighten your knees coming up on the in-breath. So down on the out-breath, up on the in-breath. Just roughly like this, don't worry too much about it. Main thing is to keep your thoughts out of the way, just put your thoughts to one side in another room or something. And you're just doing this physical exercise with your body, taking your torso down in one piece and then bringing it up, taking it down and then bringing it up, taking it down and bringing it up, and then now taking it down, and then put your hands out the front, and so you're bringing your hands as you come up to your chin and then down. As you go down, taking them down to your hips and then turning them, and then bringing them up to your chin as you come up, and then down as you go down, and turning again up to the chin. Imagine a ball of energy that's coming up and down your body with your hands. Raising the ball through your spine. It's going through the middle of your body. And it's waking your body up with energy, what's called chi. And then next time, with your hands coming up, just keep going past your chin, and then up into the air, and then out to the sides, and expanding out with your chest, and then down to your hips again, and then imagine the ball coming up through the middle of your body, and then it expands outwards at the top there, and then comes, and your hands come down again, you meet the ball again, comes up through the centre of your body, and then it gets to the top and it expands outwards. One last one, doing it a bit slower. Ball's coming up the middle of your body. Take some deeper breaths, and then it's slowly expanding outwards at the top there, and then going down, hands going down, and just standing for a minute or so, just being aware of your body in general, aware of yourself standing. So you've probably got some more energy now, so that when you sit down in meditation, that'll be there to help you stop slumping or being tired. So just in your own time, moving into your meditation. So this morning we're going to do a mindfulness of breathing meditation in 4 stages. The usual 4 stages, so I will say what those are for people who are new. I'll say it now, and then I'll say it as we go along as well. So in the first stage we just watch our breath. We watch it come into our body, but watch it go out again, just naturally as it is, not changing it in any way. When we notice that the breath has exited the body, then we just do a little count in our head, silently to ourselves, 1. And then the next breath, we watch that coming in, we watch it going out again, and then we count 2, and then breathe in, breathe out, count 3, until we get to 10, and then on the next breath we watch it come in, we watch it go out, we count 1 again. So we count sets of 10 breaths, and whenever we get lost, we can't remember what we're doing, what number we're on, or we're on a 17 or something, we just don't worry about it, we just start again from then watching the next breath come and go, count 1, and so on. In the second stage we just do exactly the same thing, but the counting is just before the breath begins, because this is a little bit harder to anticipate. It's harder to anticipate something than to mark it happening. In the next stage, the third, we drop the counting and just watch the breath without any support. And then the fourth stage, we watch the delicate sensations of the breathing as the breath passes the nose, or the lips, kind of tuning into the fine sensations that are hard to stay with, hard to spot. So we have to keep making our awareness a bit stronger through the practice to stay with it. Mindfulness of breathing. So it's breathe in, breathe out, count 1. Breathe in, breathe out, count 2, and so on. And the second stage, we count just before the breath begins. So now just drop the counting and just try and stay with the breath itself as much as you can, from moment to moment. The actual sensations and movement of the breath. In the fourth stage, we focus our attention on the delicate sensations that arise where the air first enters the body. Maybe it's around the nostrils or on the lips. We try to stay as much as we can with those delicate sensations as the breath comes and goes. Trying to not grasp after them, having inside a sense of spaciousness, enough time, enough space to actually notice what's going on there. In your own time, just bring your meditation to a close. So we still have a bit of time to just kind of come out of that. So having come out of that meditation, this all looks complicated. Yeah. So I need to find a way of talking about it where it's actually helpful and significant to you. It will be when I get my head around it. All right, so I'm going to start. So often, I mean, I've been involved in Tree Ratna, or what used to be called Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, since 1988. Summer 1988 was my first contact with the Buddhist movement, what used to, one of the things that used to happen would be that you get various kind of waves of interest in different things would pass like through the movement. So I remember a time like in the early 90s when the buzz was what's it called? NLP. Everyone was into NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, so and then that would pass, and then everybody be into Robert Bly, and then that would pass, and then everybody be into something else. So sometime around 1994, this book became the buzz topic of the movement. So it's called Buddhist Saints in India: A Study in Buddhist Values and Orientations by Reginald Ray. So Reginald Ray is an American who's like a teacher in the kind of Tibetan tradition. He's not a monk. He's like, often American teachers aren't are not monks, but they're kind of they're quite experienced in Tibetan and other branches of Buddhism. And so basically it's a very thick book, but the basic point that Reginald Ray brings up in the book is that so Buddhism is kind of understood as being like a twofold model. So you've got the monks and the lay people, you know, so the monks are, there's probably some monks in Burma. So in the twofold model, it's like the monks are seen as the real deal, you know, the real practitioners, and then the lay people, kind of, who often are wearing white, they support the monks, and often in like Southeast Asian countries, it's like the you know, the monks have like something like 200 odd rules that they're trying to follow, down to real detail about their dress and their, you know, not eating before midday, sorry, not eating after midday, and all sorts of things like that, you know. And then the lay people tend to support the monks with alms, so they give alms. The monks will go around the village in Thailand or whatever it is, and with these big bowls, and then people would put food in them, and then they go back to the monastery and eat, you know, eat the food, and not having anything at all after afternoon or whenever lunchtime is. Yeah, so this is like the twofold model, and it's kind of there as well a bit in Tibetan Buddhism, you know, Tibetan monks and the ordinary lay people in Tibet. And I think sometimes the lay people see themselves as not, as in a way, kind of not, they're not proper practitioners, you know, and in India you often get this, I think, with Hinduism, that people think, oh, the time to practice spirituality is when you're retired, you know. So you can get this view in Buddhist countries, you know, that people kind of will have an ordinary life and then they'll retire and then they'll start going to a monastery, or they'll start doing, you know. So this is how things can be in Buddhism. But what Reggie Ray sort of came up with was a different analysis. So what he came up with was what he called the threefold model. So he looked at the Buddhist tradition, and he saw that, well, yeah, you had your monks and you had your lay people, but you also had these other people that were what he called forest renunciants. So the forest renunciant is like the hermit, you know, the hermit in the cave, or the lone meditator, you know, up in above the snow line. So you get all these people like Milarepa, who's this Tibetan saint, you know, who became enlightened, and he used to live on nettles and you know, up above the snow line, and he managed to do this thing called tumo practice, which is like he could manage to heat his own body up through some breathing exercise or some way in which he did it. So he only wore like a thin cloth in the freezing cold, you know, minus ridiculous temperatures. So Ray identified the fact that it's not a twofold model; it's a threefold model. And each of those each contribute, each of the three contributes towards the whole in Buddhism. So in 1994, so an older member called Vajragupta wrote a book called The Triratna Story, sometime I think in the 2000s, and he said that Sangharakshita recommended Buddhist saints in India back in 1994, and Subhuti, in those days, Subhuti was kind of him and others were taking on some of Sangharakshita's responsibilities. So they were setting up an ordination process and ordaining people, and it was a lot of it was happening at Padmaloka, and then Tara, a women's retreat centre was set up as well. So it was like things became a bit more kind of, in a way, sort of organised. And I was on a ordination training retreat in 1995 on the topic of what is the order, and on that retreat, Subhuti, he talked about the Threefold model, and he sort of broadened it out really, and he said, well, actually, probably you could see not just your people in the forest, but your hermits, but also like people like artists and scholars and things were more like your forest renunciants, so I think I found this quite a helpful idea really, because I felt like I was more of a sort of lone figure, within the movement. I didn't quite fit in with working in team-based, right livelihood businesses and things. Although I did get some experience of that and living in communities as well. So the 3 C's were living in communities, working in a cooperative or team-based right livelihood business, and helping run a centre. So this was talked of as the sort of the way in which you start to bring about a nucleus of new society. So people who were sort of doing that were kind of, in those days, in the early 90s, were sort of seen as really doing it. And then you kind of artists and people with families and with ordinary jobs were sort of seen as like a bit not quite doing it, or on the outside of things. So anyway, yeah, so I think this model where you've got a threefold thing going on, I thought, oh, actually, yeah, maybe there's a place for me in all of this, and there's yeah. And I think what was happening there was that at that point in time, the movement was in a phase which was about the institutions. It was about establishing institutions and building up Sangha building, really. So back in 2010, I have this love. I have this kind of love of kind of ideas and kind of theory in a way, and there's that. I always remember that Monty Python sketch where John Cleese is interviewing this academic, and she says, I have this theory. My theory is that dinosaurs are thin at one end, they get fat in the middle, and then they get thin at the other. And she says, this is my theory, which obviously it's not a very big theory, but I often think, yeah, this is my theory, I've got this theory. Anyway, so I've often kind of played around with, or tried to see the patterns in things, so I'm often looking for ways in which kind of, how can I understand this? So what I kind of realised was that at a certain point was that Sri Ratna movement, the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, seems to have gone through different phases of development. So, you know, in 2010, I published an article in Shabda, which is the ordered journal, called "The Three Great Phases of the FWO Tree Ratner." Well, it wasn't Tree Ratner then, of the FWO, and I published these diagrams, these complicated diagrams. I think people just went, "Whoa, what's this?" But it was like I was trying to establish that that there's some validity in this threefold model, you know. So the way in which you could see a validity in the threefold model would be that if the different you know, categories of Buddhist practitioner came into the ascendancy at different times, and then had a long period where that happened, and then another one came into being. So so basically, you know, what I thought was that, so this is, I don't know if you can see this. So basically you've got like three circles that are overlapping. So one circle, trying to see it. So that circle there, this circle here, is Sangha building, Sangha builders, right? And then this circle here is establishing principles, and this one down here is lay expansion. Now the meaning of this circle, this one here, means that this is in the ascendancy, or this is at its peak, you know. So what I thought was that, you know, beginning in like the early 70s, what happened was that there was a phase of establishing the basic principles of the movement, and in a way this is kind of related to the forest renunciant. So it's the establishment of ideas. So Sangharakshita was giving lots of lectures and he was trying to work out how Buddhism could come into the West in a meaningful way. And so one of the things that one of the principles he established was that the centrality of going for refuge. So, you know, that going for refuge was primary and lifestyle was secondary. So going for refuge means putting the Buddha, his teachings and the Buddhist community at the centre of your life, and making that the main thing that you're interested in developing and building up. So yeah, so Sangharakshita gave all these talks, and then there was this like group of young guys, you know, in their 20s, some of them in the teens, you know, and Sangharakshita in his 40s, and that was it, you know. This was the movement. So you'd have like young guys sort of heading up to Glasgow or Manchester, you know, and trying to start activities, you know. So it was mainly down in London to start with, Covent Garden, and then Archway, so and Croydon. So they would, you know, go up and try to start teaching Buddhism, teaching classes, and then everything was experimental. It was like trying to, well, you know, lots of people living in squats, you know, nobody had any money. So, you know, they were all living together in squats, and then trying to practice more intensively with each other and all that sort of thing. And then in 1980, you could say that in 1980, roughly, was the kind of peak of that phase, which was the establishing of the London Buddhist Centre, you know, the whole building project, converting a fire station to you know, to London Buddhist Centre. And yeah, so and then, you know, maybe that, so we're going from 1973 through 1980, and then to maybe 1988. So you could see this is the phase of establishing principles. So, you know, when I came along in 1988, you know, Sangharakshita would give like big talks on Friends of the Western Buddhist Day, and it was, you know, he was at the centre of everything, you know. Okay, so this is like phase one, where the principle of establishing principles, and it's forest renunciant, right? Okay, and then you got phase two. So phase two is where, so these three circles are all overlapping. So it's not as if that the only people around were in the first phase. It's not as if the only people around were people building up the institutions, or, you know, but establishing principles, being radical, you know. There'd also be people in families, you know, you know, and there'd be people who maybe would be more kind of like drawn to things being established in an institutional sort of way, you know. So they're all there, but there's kind of less of them. It's not their era in a way. They're in the kind of in the sidelines sort of thing. But in the second phase, what happens is that we gradually move from establishing principles. So once you've established all your principles, you run out of things to do, don't you? You know, once it's all worked out, then what then happens? Well, something else needs to happen. So what happened was that kind of institutions started being built. So basically, you know, from 1988, sort of around that time, Padmaloka started to be running kind of ordination training retreats, and rather than everything being Sangharakshita, which is what it was over here pretty much, and Subhuti being his secretary, it was like structures were starting to be established whereby the ordination process could happen without Sangharakshita being involved in everything, you know. So it's like Padmaloka, and then eventually there was all sort of lots of talk about how is responsibility going to be handed on from Sangharakshita to the rest of the movement. So it's like the preceptors college was established, Majjhima Loka. So you could say that the peak of this phase, which started in '88 and maybe went to 2003, something like that, was that sort of thing. And at the peak is like in Majjhima Loka being established in Birmingham, and the preceptors college and all that. So I think what happens is, you know, whichever we most identify of the three types of Buddhist, then sometimes we're going to feel out of it, and sometimes we're going to feel like, oh, it's all kind of institutions, it's all, you know, it's all centralized, and where's the power, you know, where do I fit in, and all of that, or that sort of thing, if we don't identify with that, you know. But, you know, like once you've established your institutions and got all that going, then I mean, each of these has each of the types of Buddhists has its kind of downside. So you know, Subhuti talks about this in his talk in 1995. You know, that what can happen is, like with the institution, with any institution, it can just kind of settle down and in a way ossify. And this has happened to Buddhism repeatedly. You know, that you've had big monastic universities and then they just settle down into something that's kind of become a bit, maybe a bit, well, Theravada Buddhism, it got really heady and all about theory, you know, dark theories about the about dharmas. You know, it's like, it seems to just get away from the main point, you know. And then what would happen is you'd have some innovation come in, like Mahayana Buddhism, which would then redress the balance and bring back the life into the institution. So it's like the you know, the forest renunciant is always doing that with the institution, you know, two institutions, I think. So yeah, so you know, there's a danger that with any of these, that it becomes too much. Anything can end up being too much, you know. So maybe what happened was there wasn't enough sense of sort of individual choice and freedom, and the institutions just became a bit kind of all pervasive. So what happened then, phase 3, was that you know, around 2003 or something, you have the beginnings of things like Buddhafield. So expect chaos, you know, like the, you know, Lokabandhu would sort of say, the motto of Buddhafield is expect chaos. So, you know, a bunch of people went out and started teaching meditation to the kind of New Age community and travellers and pagans and all sorts, you know. And it was like, you know, kind of well out there and on the edge of things, but over time, this is my theory, yeah. You know, but over time, it's almost like that began to become more almost like something that was more accepted. And you know, so maybe about 2010 was the kind of peak of that. And maybe like what's happened, you know, is that things can get too. So lay expansion means that you know, working in the world is more acceptable. Being in the world is more acceptable. So having a family is more acceptable. So that's happened. You know, things. You know, it's become more, less and less people have been working in team-based right livelihoods or living in communities and stuff like that. So it's like you've had this lay expansion, and it's, in a way, it's had its downside. You know, that some of that intensity that was there in the early days of people living together and working intensively on projects and things is kind of like, it's gone a bit, you know. So this was the final one in my article in 2010, and so I was kind of like predicting that you know, that this lay phase would end about 2018. And one of the things I said in the article was that it's like you might think that you might think that, say now, you know, for instance, it's 2020, you know, you might think that, oh, it's all kind of, you know, it's all a bit chaotic, you know, there's all these views around, and, you know, nobody lives in communities anymore and all that sort of thing. So you might be, if you're a establishing principles type person, you know, then you might think, oh, it's all Buddhafield, it's all chaos. It's all, you know, nobody's living in communities anymore, you know. But actually, it can appear like that, but what's happening is it is actually tailing off. And what is happening is that the new thing that needs to happen is coming back, is coming in again, you know. So so this is my prediction. It was funny when I predicted last time. They went, "Who's predicting the future?" So this is my prediction for the future. So here we are, 2000. Well, it's roughly 2020. So it is. I think what this, you can see this happening. Actually, I think that the basic kind of principles of the movement are being kind of, you know, I think it does need to happen. We've gone too far in a way in terms of laissez-faire, you know. So people are bringing back the structures of things and some of the principles, and like living together in communities, and I think particularly now, you know, with COVID, that we need to have some sort of solution that's going to address the problems in society, you know. People living in isolation, you know, kind of living in sort of alienating kind of social settings, you know, that's, you know, capitalist, you know, social media, all that sort of stuff. It's like it's all running away from people, and, you know, so it's like, I think what needs to happen is, like, we need to start looking again at life and what, you know, what's a better way of doing things. So, you know, I predict that that this will carry on, you know, and there will be nuclei of people in the movement and outside the movement who will be sort of trying to re-establish sort of something that's a bit more solid, and, you know, the Buddhist principles to kind of move forward. And we're not just principles, but actually methods of doing that, you know. So we might start to see more people living in communities again. And but in a way, back in those days, you had something called, phase one, you know, you had, you know, one of the things that arose was something called fierce friendship. You know, people would, Sangharakshita, one of his sayings was, better honest collision than dishonest collusion, you know. So it's like people would sort of, there'd be a thing called fierce friendship, where people would actually challenge each other quite strongly about what they were doing. I think that might come back again a bit, you know. So it's like, yeah, there needs to be something like that. So that's my sort of prediction. I just want to say something about that I've not mentioned earlier. When I did my physics degree, and I was doing classical mechanics. So what the lecturer said was that, so a two-body problem is like where you've got a collision between two billiard balls. So with mechanics, you can predict that. You can predict what's going to happen. If one ball comes in at a certain angle, the other's going to go off at another angle. But what the guy said was that if it's three all impacting on, you know, at the same time, you can't solve that. There's no way of predicting what will happen, you know. So I think this is really interesting, because basically what you've got here is a three-body problem. You've got an interaction between three different types of Buddhists, you know. And so it's almost it means that what happens is kind of ineffable. It can't be kind of controlled or something like that. And maybe what happens is it follows some sort of law of like it seems to be doing, of like you know, going through different. Each comes into has its own phase, and each is part of the whole. Each contributes to the whole. So in some of my earlier talks, I brought in the idea of flow, and I can never say his name. It's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He was an American psychologist and one of the main originators of something called positive psychology. So he's got a little book called Flow, but he's got a big book called Creativity, which I've got the audio book of. Flow and the Psychology of Discovery and Invention. And what he says in that is really interesting. So he says that creativity isn't just about, you know, the artist or the poet, whatever it is, producing their work, you know, in isolation, you know, being creative. So, for instance, Van Gogh, you know, painting the, you know, sunflowers or whatever, you know, something like that. He's got a threefold model here. So it's like you've got three aspects. You've got the person, the field that they're in, and the domain itself, which is like the culture. So what you have is you've got your, if this is the artist, you know. So it says creativity hasn't finished until the product of the artist has entered the culture. So it's not complete until, you know, you've got the sunflowers hanging in the National Gallery in London, you know, and you know Leonardo's Christ selling for $450 million. So it's like it has to enter the culture for the process to be complete. So I think this is really interesting, and it kind of relates to, you know, to the threefold model here, you know. So it's like you've got everything has got to been brought together. So the creative person in Triratna isn't creative until their ideas have been absorbed into the body of the movement and are, you know, used in it and present in it, you know. So this is part of what I'm trying to do with these talks, is to try and bring the ideas that I've developed over the last 16 years of writing my book into the body of dialogue in not only Triratna but in the world in general, you know. So I think I think Jordan Peterson says a similar thing about creativity. You probably maybe got it from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Yeah. So in terms of the aim, the Buddhist aim of enlightenment, you know, attaining enlightenment. So you could either think, you know, the attaining enlightenment for your own benefit, or you can think of like the Bodhisattva ideal, which is trying to bring the whole of sentient life to enlightenment, you know. You're seeing everybody's enlightenment as important as your own. So whichever it is, it's like, well, on the way you've got the level of stream entry. So stream entry is the point at which your momentum towards enlightenment is strong enough that you're guaranteed. in a way, it's a theoretical point. You know, you're guaranteed to actually get to enlightenment because you've got enough clarity and you've got enough momentum and all that sort of thing. And Sangha actually talks about it as if like you've got this, you've got the Earth and the Moon there, you know, and you take off in your rocket, and at a certain point, the gravitational pull of the Earth is not as big as the gravitational pull of the Moon, so you end up going towards the Moon, you know. So it's like a kind of momentum thing. So you know, if we're going to attain stream entry, then we have to address all our weaknesses. You know, we have to address our weaknesses. So it's not enough to be just a forest renunciant, you know, just an artist or scholar, you know. It's not enough to just work in a centre. It's not enough to just be good at supporting your family and being responsible in the world, you know. Not from an enlightenment point of view. You've got to develop them all, you know. So you know, as a forest renunciant type, I've had to learn how to be, or at least make some effort with the institutions, you know, live in communities or cooperate with the Buddhist Centre, and I've also had to learn how to kind of be in the world, you know, like try and put my scholarship and artistic stuff on a solid footing, you know, so that I'm supporting myself and yeah, you know. So it's like, yeah, we need all of these, and I think this is a really great message of this model that you know, we can end up just doing what we prefer. You know, I prefer to be an artist. I prefer to be in doing secular mindfulness or something in the world, but you know, yeah, unless we're going to end up with weaknesses, because these are all, some people have got these strengths, you know, some people have got these strengths, and so maybe we end up, you know, kind of majoring in one type of being one type of Buddhist, but minoring in the others, and hopefully, you know, you would have in the end, in a person, you'd have you know, the three circles coming together. You know, I suppose in an enlightened person, there'd be overlapping in the middle there, you know, so they wouldn't really have any problems in terms of unable to do this or unable to do that, you know. So yeah, so the Bodhisattva, you know, learns all sorts of, you know, has to learn all sorts of skills. These are the 10 boonies, the path of the Bodhisattva. So they practice the perfections, which is over here somewhere. I can't do that. Of, you know, things like patience and meditation and giving and all this sort of thing, wisdom, and then, but beyond that, they work on how to be in the world, how to be effective in the world, you know, how to communicate with people, how to cooperate with people, how, you know, all that sort of stuff. So they're really orientated towards being as complete a human being as possible, you know, for the sake of all sentient beings. So yeah, what I'm going to do is to rewrite that article and put the postscript in, and then publish it again. So I can. What happened last time actually was that when I published it in Shabda, I went and made a mistake with the diagrams. So I didn't actually put all 3 diagrams in. I put one in twice, you know. So that's a bit of a shame. But anyway, so I'll redress that. this time round. Okay, so that's it for this for today, and so what I'm going to do is to have a bit of a celebration Zoom Buddhist party on Sunday in 2 days' time. So I'll leave the details in on the site, and so you're all welcome to come. I don't know. There's a maximum of 100 people, so I don't know how that'll work out. I might try and get a bigger Zoom room or something. So, but yeah, it's always good to one of the 15 points. Sangha actually says 15 points for order members, new and old, which is from the 90s, I think. Be ceremonious. So it's, 100 sessions. I'm being ceremonious. I'm marking it and celebrating it, and celebrating you lot for coming as well. So that's it for this first centenary of sessions, and I wish you all well. May all beings be enlightened in the end.